Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Rent Prep for Landlords. This is episode 210. 210, Steve.
Yes.
We've made it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a big number.
Yeah, sure. It's just a number.
I wasn't on the podcast last week, so...
You were missed.
Yeah, that's true. But I listened to it. Everything went well.
Yeah.
So that's cool. And today we got a lot of exciting stuff to cover.
Yeah. Why don't we go into that real quick, and then we'll roll our intro music. So
Sweet.
This week, I was on Reddit yesterday, and I saw a story posted that was pretty gross sounding when you just read the title of it. And basically, somebody said that their landlord has revoked permission for me to hospice. We keep getting some ad popping up on one of these listings here. You got to love those autoplay ads. The landlord revoked permission for me to hospice in the home that I've been renting from her. So this story played out a little bit more. There's a lot more to this story.
Yeah. At first, pretty gross at first glance.
Terrible.
And people, what was the engagement you said that this post got? It was something crazy, like 14,000?
Yeah. The follow-up post got over 14,000 engagements on it. So
yeah. So everybody's going crazy. The landlord can't do that. What a scumbag.
You know what it is? It's the David and Goliath thing, right?
Yeah.
David's the tenant, Goliath is the landlord.
Right.
Nobody cheers for Goliath.
Right.
So when there's a situation and the story's blurry and people don't have all the facts, they immediately just cheer for David and they go, throw a rock in between that landlord's eyes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So they were ready to kill this landlord for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And then
there's a twist.
There's a twist. Imagine that.
We will get to that later. We'll
Okay.
let you guys know. We also have another story that involves landlords in Maryland and a pretty interesting tactic that they can take to recoup rent. And we're going to be talking about Jimi Hendrix because why not?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a good dude. And we also have a landlord hotline voicemail that we'll be playing at the end of the episode.
Yep.
But all of that right after this.
1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah.
Welcome to the Rent Prep for Landlords podcast. And now your hosts, Stephen White and Eric Worrell.
All right. But before we get into this story, Steve, I'm going to spring this on you.
Okay.
Last week was the first week, and you probably heard that we were having a new podcast supporter. We got a new advertiser on the podcast, Earth Class Mail. Yeah. So I've actually been talking to a few group members about this too, because I have been sending out these bandanas and I've been getting different responses from people. I had one person who worked for the post office and was like, oh my gosh, I get it. It's a nightmare.
Yeah.
Another person who was talking about, she's down in Texas, down in Dallas, I believe. And she was just saying, I got to check my mail. I'm always, I got so much mail coming in all the time and it's hard to keep up on it. Well, Earth Class Mail, they digitize your mail for you.
It sounds like it's made for landlords.
Yeah, especially a property manager. If you've got a lot of properties, you got a bunch of mail notices, all these different types of things coming in. You're getting paper checks still.
Yep.
So it's a pretty cool service. You can check it out at earthclassmail.com. And one of the great things about it is if you enter Rent Prep in as a promo code, if you want to try it out, they have discounts depending on if you do monthly or a yearly account. But basically, you can take your mail and put it in the cloud.
Yeah, which is really cool. They will send you everything in a digital format so you can read your mail just the same as you would read through your emails and scroll through stuff and decide what's to keep and what's not.
Yeah. You get to actually select. You'll see like a scan of the mail itself before it's open, and you decide, oh no, that's junk.
Yeah.
They'll not toss it, but they'll actually shred it for you.
Right.
And then if it's something you need, they'll open it and they'll address it and they'll scan everything for you. I forget how many documents, how many pages, but it's something. It's pretty substantial. It's up to like 20 pages or something that they'll scan for each.
The shredding service alone might be worth it, because anyone that works here knows that I go by a system that I like to call the hobo bag system. And the hobo bag system is just a system of plastic bags that I keep everything in, whether it be a lunch or maybe mail and things like that. And you can imagine at my house, it fills up with junk mail or maybe a bill that I paid.
I mean, people at your gym know the hobo bag system too, right?
I refuse to have a gym bag. Yeah.
Yes. Steve's an interesting guy. He's got a lot of quirks, and one of them is the hobo bag system.
Yes. So I got hobo bags at home that are filled with mail that needs to be shredded. Some of it's junk mail. Some of it's past mortgage statements that I don't need anymore or whatever.
Steve may be a protected class as a hoarder.
Maybe. No. I do. Well, okay. Yes, I do hoard some things. I'm one of those people that mail is a good example. Emails I hoard for sure.
Mm-hmm.
There's sometimes, because how often have you run into the situation where you don't need it until you need it. And
Yep.
then after you need it, you're like, crap, where did it go? It's gone.
Yeah.
If you have a digital copy of something,
Yeah.
stuff it in a folder. It's in the cloud. You don't think of it. When you need it, you pull it out. It's
Yeah.
done. So I love it.
All right. Well, again, if you guys want to check that out and you've used promo code RentPrep, that'll get you a discount either on a monthly service or yearly. It'll change depending on which one you choose. But
Sweet.
let's get into today's podcast. We have a Reddit thread here that we are looking at on our screen here. We're actually live broadcasting this to our Facebook group. So if you guys are happen to be watching on the Facebook group right now, feel free to comment. If you want to get in on the podcast in the future, join our Facebook group, Rent Prep for Landlords. We try to live broadcast as many of these episodes as we can so we can get some live comments from people that are viewing. So
Reddit, and let me just say real quick, interesting fact, I just heard this about Reddit. It is now the 4th most popular social media platform.
yeah, it's definitely growing quick.
I don't consider it in the same ballpark as regular social media, though, right? This is a social media platform that I can actually get on board with, and I like Reddit a lot for this purpose.
Yeah.
So any landlords out there that are not familiar with Reddit, check it out. It's actually super useful.
I feel like when you're on Facebook, and no offense to, people that might be in our Facebook
Yeah,
group,
sorry.
but like, you see a comment or you see somebody post something, you're almost afraid to look at the comments sometimes.
Yeah.
And on Reddit, I'm like, oh, I can't wait to read the comments on
Top
this.
comment every time. There's some stuff that just kills you. I mean, it just cracks you up because they'll post the comment that is the funniest or top comment
Yep.
or upvoted the most. But that's on some of the funnier stuff. But Reddit's also great for searching issues that you might be running into. Certainly, there's a lot of landlord subreddits out there.
Yep. I
So-
find personal finance to be an awesome one.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you're on that one, but I'm sure our landlord and property manager listeners would be interested in it because they're probably financially savvy and focused people.
Yep.
And if you have a question, or I've learned so much just from people posting questions and getting like amazing answers, because somebody will just be like, oh, I'm a CPA or I'm, this or that. And I found the engagement on those questions to be really helpful too. So this person posts to legal advice, and she's saying that she's in Colorado and her landlord has revoked permission for me to hospice in the home I've been renting from her since I have been terminally ill. There's nothing in the lease about hospice. What should I do? So this blew up. It got how many? Over 1,000 upvotes here and 13 comments. And like we were saying in the intro, people are going after, you got to go after this landlord. I mean, just a few of the comments on here, people are saying your landlord must clearly state how you are violating the terms of your lease. Also, try calling the Colorado Tenant Law Information and Advocacy Hotline.
Yeah.
Call your social worker. They're really essentially, if you bring up Office Space, jumping to conclusions.
Yeah, exactly. They really are
one of our
jumping to
favorite movies.
conclusions. Yeah. I would wonder, so my first thought, and before I found out what the twist is here at the end, my thought was, what would the reasoning be behind the landlord saying no to hospice?
Yeah. I mean, just the amount of visits or something coming in and out of the house, or
Maybe.
because you do hear like landlords complaining of like people saying they're having too many visitors to the house, but I don't know. I didn't really have one.
Yeah, but it's not like you're having a party.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's the opposite.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, people are coming in here to take care of me, to make sure that I'm, that everything's taken care of.
But as far as the clickbait headline goes, I mean, it doesn't get worse. My landlord is refusing me to have care for hospice because I'm terminally ill.
Right.
Like, it grabs your attention for sure.
Thank God she didn't give this landlord's name.
Yes.
He'd have been lynched overnight, I think.
Oh, yeah.
That'd have been it.
So the follow-up to this, and I give this person credit, 29 Throwaways is her user account. She got 14,000 upvotes on this one. And it says, update, my landlord has revoked permission to hospice at home. WTF do I do?
Mm-hmm.
So basically, she says, and I won't read all of this because I'd have to bleep out too much stuff, but it turns out it wasn't my landlord at all. It was my roommate saying my landlord had said I couldn't hospice there.
Roommate's clearly going to hell.
Yeah.
Like
in a handbasket.
Not even a second chance on that one. What a dirtbag.
Yeah.
And even that I couldn't understand. Like, what did the roommate feel like she'd be inconvenienced by having people come in? That's just crazy to me. And the other part of the story is that she roomed basically shared the apartment with this roommate under the pretense that she was going to be dying here. Like she says in her article, like, I need a place to die peacefully. And the roommate was like, okay.
Yeah.
So it's so bizarre to me, but Yeah, clear case of why you don't always just jump to conclusions that it's the landlord that's the monster in this situation.
Yeah, yeah, and I could see how if you're in this person's situation, it's pretty easy to react because it's just, I mean, I don't know, it's really fight or flight. I mean, your
Yeah.
life is on the line, and you're, just going to kind of react to it, and
Right.
it's tough to kind of read through it, and it's unfortunate that this happens. But there is a good lesson in here: is to, don't jump to conclusions, don't make assumptions, whether you're the landlord or the tenant,
Right.
and try to get to the bottom of what's really happening, because a lot of times there's two sides to the story.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's a sad story, but at least, hopefully it'll work out now that she's got a little bit more insight here. And the landlord said they just never even heard anything about it because they called the landlord and I have no idea what you're talking about.
Right.
This next story comes from the Baltimore Sun. The author's name is Doug Donovan. So this one I found pretty interesting because I didn't know this was true in Maryland, but what he said is the real estate company owned by Jared Kushner's son-in-law and top advisor to President Donald Trump has been the most aggressive in Maryland in using a controversial debt collection tactic, getting judges to order the arrest of people who owe his company money. So he has 17 apartment complexes in the state, and they have sought the civil arrest of 105 former tenants for failing to appear in court to face allegations of unpaid debt. And this is since 2013. So this kind of caught my attention because I've never heard of this before, just getting a judge to, essentially get somebody arrested because they owe you, unpaid rent.
Right. Now,
So,
a lifetime ago, before I got into background checks, my entrance into the credit industry, I was dealing with something that probably not a lot of people have heard of, something called replevins.
it's a great word.
It sounds like a made-up word.
Replevins.
Yeah, replevins.
Pass me more replevins and Grey Coupon, please.
So a replevin was a legal document that you would obtain to take back ownership of a piece of equipment. So we used to do repossessions for these large street pavers or something that might cost $1 million, from Caterpillar or something like that. In extreme cases, we would see, there was definitely times where somebody didn't show up a number of times to a court appearance and they would issue a warrant. And obviously you get pulled over for a traffic ticket or whatever. They're not going to go out kicking your door down looking for you. But if they happen to come across you for another reason and you have an open warrant out for your arrest, you're going to get arrested. So that kind of reminded me of this situation, although it seems like way more aggressive in this situation. Like they're actually going out and looking to arrest these people who have failed to appear for, what was it, 2 court appearances?
I believe it was 2 court appearances. Let me scroll down here a little bit. Judges approve. They call them body attachments.
Yeah.
It's just like all I thought about was like, the cameras that policemen wear.
A body
a body
camera.
attachment, a body camera. But yeah, they compel tenants to show up at civil proceedings. Landlords say that tenants are not arrested for owing money, but for missing at least 2 court hearings about the alleged arrears.
Yeah. This is a tough one because I could understand both sides. I really can. Put aside for a second that it's Jared Kushner, and I'm sure it's pretty split even across our audience of people that would hate his guts or other people that are like, man, whatever, let business be business.
Between the subway guy and Jared Kushner, I feel like the name it's a controversial name nowadays.
It's become tainted. So yeah, I mean, I on one hand, I think it's great that it gives the landlord some power back. I mean, any landlord I'm sure out there could relate if you've run across a situation where you're trying to hunt somebody down for money. It's not fun, and you're likely probably not going to get paid for it. I think what makes this one gross to a lot of people is that this is a huge company doing it. This isn't a mom and pop landlord. They're not struggling. You know what I mean? And
I hear his father-in-law is the president of the United States.
Yeah,
now they're not struggling for money.
They're not. But yeah, I mean, that's probably what makes this thing gross, if anything. Otherwise, I think that it could potentially be a pretty useful tool for landlords to say, hey, we're not going to get taken advantage of like we have in the past. And
I was going to say, how many units do you think Jared Kushner has in the state of Maryland?
17 complexes?
Yeah.
I'm going to guess no less than 2,000 units.
He has 9,000 units.
Holy moly.
Most of them in Baltimore County. They generate at least $90 million in revenue annually.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy. But yeah, I can see what you're saying. It's one of those things where, again, 2 sides to the coin.
Yeah.
You can kind of understand it from either person's perspective. But yeah, it's another David and Goliath type thing. And that's
Sure.
why it's going to kind of drive this headline and get a bunch of shares online because of that reason.
Now, if you told the other side of the story and said there's a mom and pop landlord and they have 3 rental units and it's working towards their retirement and this person skipped out on the rent and now they're having problems paying the mortgage because of the unexpected vacancy and they're not able to recoup any of that money and there was damages and this and that. And then you hear it from that perspective and now they're going to arrest the person that put them in this predicament. You're like, yay, good for them. All right.
Yeah. Especially, I want to think like the landlord's name is Geppetto or something. Something like really fond and like it's just a poor little boy made of wood.
Right.
He couldn't even afford his mortgage on his rentals.
Right.
Poor Geppetto. I don't know. My brain went off in a weird way, but.
No, but I hear you. You want to sympathize with them and you don't want to see somebody that, I don't know. It just doesn't seem like justice in this situation and they make a good point in the article and say that it's really imprisoning poor people.
Yeah.
I get where they're coming from when it's Kushner companies versus everyone else.
Well, one of the other articles that I was researching and decided not to use for this episode, but it looks like maybe I am using now, is there was a story in California about how a lot of, due to what's going on in Silicon Valley, a lot of mom and pop landlords are getting pushed out for corporations.
Mm-hmm.
So there are these trusts that are owned by like Wall Street. And basically what it does is it changes the dynamic of maybe somebody who wants to work with the tenant versus somebody who is purely driven by profits because they got to report to their superiors.
Right.
And they're saying what's happening is this one company, I think it's called like Invitation Home, I want to say it is. They have like 12,600 rental properties in California, and they have issues with people that can't pay the rent, and they are charging them exorbitant fees. So it's $95 if you're 1 hour late. This one person tried to pay. They tried to pay the rent online through the online portal, but it wasn't working.
Right.
So they ended up mailing their check, and it was returned to them. And he had over $1,000 in late fees that he had to pay.
Right.
And they're saying the fact that these mom and pops are being pushed out because of the housing market there, and then the corporate companies are coming in, that it's changing the dynamics between the landlord and the tenant.
Sure.
And it makes sense.
And it's not good for landlords overall because these are the type of things that push legislation, that push states to be more tenant friendly.
Mm-hmm.
And the landlords get lumped into a category like with Jared companies or Kushner companies, and it's not the same category. It's not the same situation. So
I do have 2 units.
Yeah, I just don't
in Erie
think
County.
I don't think this is good overall for landlords. I don't see it as good. If it was something that landlords had access to, you know what I mean, smaller companies had access to it. But again, even that. As I'm saying it, I'm thinking to myself, well, what are you saying? That if you're a big company, you're not allowed to chase money down?
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah, it's tough. Like a lot of things in politics, you know, there's a lot of different perspectives and different ways you can spin it. So
right.
So this next story comes from Mashable. The author is Amanda Uren. It's an unfortunate last name.
Yeah.
It's Uren. I don't know. How do you think you would say it?
It's urine.
Yeah. It was a tough childhood.
Yeah.
Yeah. Except maybe if she was stung by a jellyfish or somebody was stung, everyone went over to her.
I did see an article that you had up earlier that the author's name was Poopin.
Oh, how did I miss that?
I don't know. I wonder if they're related.
Yeah.
But anyway, this was an interesting story. I never knew Jimi Hendrix was evicted.
Yeah.
Not shocking.
I mean, he was evicted by Ringo Starr.
That was shocking.
Yeah. So 34 Montague Square in, am I saying this right? Marylebone, London. It's a famous place. It's part of music history. The Beatles drummer Ringo Starr leased the ground floor and basement apartment in the mid-1960s, and Paul McCartney created several Beatles demos there in 1965, including I'm Looking Through You from the album Revolver. So Jimi Hendrix also lived in the apartment, subletting it from Ringo beginning in December 1966. He lived with his girlfriend, Kathy Etchingham, and also with his manager, Chaz Chandler, and his girlfriend, Loda Null, and the monthly rent was £30. So it was a seminal time in Jimmy's career. He released Purple Haze in March of 1967. The same year, he played at the Monterey Pop Festival after Paul McCartney recommended him. It was at this festival that Jimmy famously set his guitar on fire at the end of the performance.
Sweet, yeah, I knew that.
Which, I'm younger, right?
Yeah.
I wasn't around when he was like setting this guitar on fire. I always thought that was something that happened at Woodstock. I had no idea.
No.
So
Woodstock, he did the Star Spangled Banner.
Ah.
That might be what you're thinking.
Okay. So he also wrote "The Wind Cries Mary" at the apartment following an argument he had with Kathy. Her middle name was Mary, and over the ability to cook. Sounds like a reasonable argument. And Kathy stormed out. The song was released in May of 1967 and reached number 6 in the British charts. But this is the apex of the story.
Okay.
Jimmy's time at 34 Montauk Square came to an abrupt end in 1967 when Ringo evicted him for throwing whitewash over the walls while on an acid trip.
Yeah.
Your classic eviction story.
Yeah. I feel like super artistic people have one foot on each line, over each side of the line of reality. So sometimes they do things kind of crazy, like throw paint against the wall or do weird stuff if, they're on acid especially. What I found kind of interesting about this story is that Ringo Starr, like, at what point did he become like some super responsible landlord that wanted to do things?
Yeah.
Right? Like,
and why? Like, you're Ringo Starr. I mean, I don't know where this was in the, the timeline of his career, but did you really need to sublet for 30 pounds a month?
Right. I don't know enough about Ringo Starr to know, like, maybe he's some super savvy business guy that started buying up properties early on in his career. That would have been pretty early on in his career. I mean, Beatles came on the scene in the 50s.
But if he was subletting it, he didn't even own that property, right? He was just subletting it out. So he was probably on.
Yeah, that could be it. I mean, he probably was freaking out because he'd be responsible for stuff, or maybe that would, but I don't know. It kind of goes against rock and roll culture, right? Yeah, I almost would expect Ringo Starr to be like, "Cool, man. I like what you did with the wall.
I love it."
Yeah, exactly. But no, he's like, "Hey, what are you doing? My name's on this. You can't be doing this. And I don't want to have problems with the landlord." And so Jimi Hendrix was evicted.
Yeah, we'll post a link to this article. It's got some pretty funny photos, especially if you're a music buff. You might like checking them out. Just some pictures of Jimi Hendrix in that apartment. And it's funny because a lot of this stuff, like, I'm pretty sure I've looked at this cabinet for my house because all of this is retro now and is in. So it must be about the age of things coming back into style.
Right.
Not his outfit, but
I think that would look good on you, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, nice velour suit like that.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, pretty sweet.
All right. Well, let's get to the next section of the podcast here. This is the Landlord Hotline. And I always forget the number because I never write it down. I think it's like 716-218 and 4 other digits. You can find them in the show notes. But we have a real quick call that we're going to discuss here. And why don't we take a listen here as one of our callers left us a message here.
What happens if a person moves out and refuses to take their property and is homeless and you have nowhere to give them notice to move their property?
Okay.
Well,
so
let's repeat it for the people watching on the Facebook Live. So basically, somebody has evicted a tenant and they don't know where to send the notice because the person is homeless and they have left property in their rental property.
Correct. My advice would be try to send any notices to the address that you have. Assume that the post office is either going to forward them or return them to you as return to sender. So at least you have proof that you've tried to issue proper notice. You've tried to communicate. You'll have that proof and you can save that. Obviously, things have been stamped. Things have been returned to sender. And then in terms of what you do with the person's property, it varies state by state in terms of what you legally have to do. A lot of states require that you put it in storage and you hold it for a certain amount of time and then it becomes your property after that period of time. So this landlord never mentions what state she's from, or he's from.
I think it's she.
She's from? Okay. It was a raspy, like Demi Moore voice. I don't know. It was on the line. Yeah.
I lost my cigarettes and a tenant in the same week.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know her state specifically, but I would imagine she's going to end up having to put that into storage. Obviously, the person's homeless. You're not going to recover that money that you paid storage. You're not going to end up probably recovering any of the past due rent or any of those things. So at this point, it's just a matter of following the rules and following protocol so that you don't do anything that's going to get you in trouble.
Yeah. So I think the takeaway for anyone listening, if you haven't ran into this situation yet, if it does come up, know that there is a protocol. It's state specific many times.
Yeah.
So before you do anything, look up the laws in your area so that you're not caught in, hot water because you didn't follow the protocol and suddenly you owe this person money that you had to evict from your.
Let's talk real quick about 2 things that you don't do that I'm positive of.
Okay.
Number one, you don't throw their stuff out.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, you don't bring their stuff to their new place. In this case, it would be on the street somewhere where this person's living. But I remember that person in the landlord group that did that
Yeah.
and brought all the stuff in garbage bags and dumped it on the front lawn of the new place. As awesome as that story kind of is, I think for some landlords are cheering and being like, yeah, I wish I could do that. Don't do that.
Yeah.
That's a bad idea. But
We got an interesting comment here that came on the live broadcast that we're doing in the Facebook group.
okay.
This came from Cindy, and she's in Ontario, Canada, so
Oh,
not far from
yeah.
us, just across the water here.
Yeah, right over the pond.
Yeah. So
Little
she had
mini
said, let's see if I can get the full comment, but she said, consider yourself fortunate that you're not in Ontario, Canada, because landlords have no rights in a residential rental. It says renters can bring a dog into a pet-free rental, and there's all sorts of things. So just kind of interesting if you happen to be listening from Canada. That's
Yeah.
another good point.
And Cindy, I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but Canada just changed, Ontario specifically, just changed their legislation regarding criminal background checks. Pretty interesting. There's an
Yeah.
additional layer that has to be added in now. If you're doing a background check on somebody, they have to not only sign the typical application that says, I agree to have a background check done and blah, blah, blah. Now they have to sign an additional authorization form that says, you're processing my application and you're going to be running background checks. Here's my specific permission for the criminal records. So just kind of a pain.
People like paperwork, though. They like
They must.
extra,
They must love it.
unnecessary paperwork.
They must love it.
Yeah. So sorry if we ruined your day there, Cindy. You
Yeah,
know that
sorry,
already.
Cindy. But we obviously right across the border. We're 15 minutes from Ontario.
Yeah. But
so-
Kimberly from the U.S. says, you know what? It sounds like the U.S. too, as
Yeah.
far as some of the restrictions that are
True.
placed on you as a landlord. 'Cause
No doubt.
there's plenty of things going on, but
Yeah.
we'll address all those in another episode.
Yeah.
Because this concludes episode number 210.
Yeah.
And if you guys aren't in the Facebook group already, you can check that out. Just go on Facebook, search for the title of this podcast, Rent Prep for Landlords.
Can we play this out with some Jimi Hendrix?
I don't think so.
Is that legal?
I don't think so.
Dang.
I don't know. Like, what's the statute of limitations on that? Like, how
50
old?
years, I'm
50
pretty sure.
years? I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure we're not good then.
All right.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah, it's okay.
Playing into my mind.
Yeah, we'll play it out with our music.
All right.
But yeah, join the Facebook group if you haven't already, Rent Prep for Landlords. And however you're listening to this podcast, feel free to leave us a review. Always like seeing a new review come in. You know what? 5 stars, 4 stars, 3 stars, whatever you want. Preferably,
No.
Five.
Five.
All right, yeah, give us a 5-star review. Why not?
Yeah.
But if you guys want to leave us a review, that's always appreciated. Gives us a little extra juice for making these episodes. So, and thank you to the people that are watching on the live broadcast. And if you want to join in on the next episode, look out for that on Tuesdays afternoons.
Yeah, we'll be here.
All right, sounds good.
All
Take
right.
care, everybody.